Welcome to this Blender tutorial where we will create a beautiful low-poly house step by step. This tutorial will help you improve your skills in 3D modeling, texturing, lighting and rendering. We will start by modeling the house and surrounding elements in a clean low-poly style. Then we will add materials to bring the scene to life, followed by lighting and rendering to achieve a stunning final result. If you enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to support my channel. It really helps me grow and create more content for you. Without any further ado, let's jump directly into tutorial. Let's talk about the image reference first, that we will use that and we will create our scene based on that. This is the image reference that we are going to actually start our modeling. Then I will talk about the texturing and lighting. I'd like to import my image reference in Blender so that we can see, or if you have a secondary monitor, you can put the image on your secondary monitor. You can have a look at that. When my website is ready, so I will put the link for the downloading the projects file and more, but currently it is busy and I'm trying to fix it as soon as possible. But in case you can start modeling and create your scene to follow along this tutorial easier, you can take a screenshot of the image reference and start creating that. So but let's have a very short intro about using Blender. So with holding middle mouse, you will see this area, this screencast key. With holding the middle mouse, you can rotate on your scene. So let's press Shift A, and I like to add this as an head. It shows to show easily what I mean. So middle mouse is rotating in our scene. You can hold on Shift and middle mouse to make a pan, and then Control and middle mouse will zoom in and zoom out. So once again, middle mouse will rotate on your scene, Shift and middle mouse make a pan, and Control and middle mouse will zoom in and zoom out. So you have these the same things by using. You can access the same thing by using these tools right here. This is for zoom in and out, and this hand is for making a pan, and for rotating is just a middle mouse. Let's select it and press X to delete that. So now we have nothing in our outliner. You can see that the Blender is divided in different sections, such as viewport. So here we have more than 90% of our job will be done in the 3D viewport, or more than that. But when we will talk about the shading, of course we will use the viewport again to see the changes of adding materials, adding nodes. And here we have the outliner. All the models that we will add, we will see those here. So you can group them by selecting them, and we can press M to make a collection, and we can name the collection to mesh, for example. You can press numpad period key to zoom on your object. If you have multiple objects, you can select both of those and press numpad, and you will see these two are in focus. You can solo by pressing Shift and H. Now if I just press Shift and H, you notice that I have two mesh, but one of those is hidden. And if I just press let's press Alt H to bring those back, and now I can press Shift and H, this one, and it will hide everything else except this selected, and Alt and H will bring everything back. There is a lot of things to cover, but we will cover each of these when it is time to cover those. For example, now we are in layout, and in layout you will see these things such as outliner, properties, and in the properties we see all of these things such as render, output. And the good things in Blender is that once you hover your mouse on a specific object or on a specific part tools, it will pop up a text that allows you to read what this is doing. So that's a very good opportunity that we have in Blender. Then we have all of these things. We have the materials. So let's remove all of these by pressing A, and you can follow along these. Easier if it's hard. So let's change the color of these to something else, like white. So you can press X and delete those. And for the texturing, we will use UV unwrapping and shading. Now let's go back to layout. So let's start creating these nice scene that that I showed you in the image reference. So we can start using black, and that's going to be the cube. So you notice that if I just press Shift A, you will have access to this menu. So we go to mesh. Most of the things that we will use is the mesh. Later we will use lights. So let's go to mesh and we add a cube. So we enter tab, and once I enter tab, I will have access to this pie menu. So I actually did change a few things. So let's go to edit preferences, and if I just open up preferences, I believe, yeah, it is the key map. If you open up key map, you can turn on, activate the tab for pie menu. Once you enable that, you can save it. And now if you just press tab, you will have access to all of these pie menu. So it is a lot better instead of just having it. Before we just press tab, we could press tab and we directly could change it between the object mode and edit mode. But having this pie menu is a lot better, because later if we use texture paint, so it is a lot easier to just quickly switch between these. Okay, you understand what I mean? So that's a lot useful. So we press tab and we choose, and we go to edit mode, or we can simply switch from here, from top left corner. The first thing that we want to learn in editing is vertex, edge, and faces. Each object has these three. Let's press Shift and Z, and if you press Shift and Z, it will switch fastly between solid mode and wireframe mode. So it is good to keep in mind. Then, so one is actually, I'm a hotkey user, hotkey person. So I like to use hotkey a lot because it save our time a lot and make our job easier. So 1, 2, 3 is the hotkey for vertex, edge, and faces. So we will use these a lot. So keep in mind. So now for this basic house, we first need to shape our model. So we select this face and we grab it by G, and we can rotate it by R, and we can scale it by S. So G, R, and S for scale. And then we have these axes, X, Y, and Z. If I just turn on viewport stabilize, we can turn on Z axis as well. And we enter tab, let's go to object mode, and we press H to hide these. You notice that we have three axes. The blue one is Z axis, and X, which is the red, and Y is the green. If I press Alt H, we go back to edit mode. So each object, each of these grab, rotation, and a scale, we can use this we can use those, and a combination of the axis we can model anything that we like. For example, we press G and then Z axis. We want to move it in this face to Z axis. Or we grab this one, G, and I like to move it to Y axis. Or we can move it to actually X axis. So that depends on the situation that we define ourselves. Okay, so first thing is blocking out this scene. Now I like to use the these tools that we have here. The first one is extrude. We are not going to use all of these tools, but if they have those that we will use for creating our scene. The first one is extrude. The extrude is using E. The letter E is for extrude. So press E and we extrude it out. And then we hold down Alt to select this loop face. You notice that we are in face mode. And then we press Alt and E to have access to this menu, and we choose face along normals. Oh, I believe I choose the wrong thing. So you can see that it is individual and not face along normal. So face along normal will have this interesting shape. You can press S to make it to make all the edges better. It is actually the offset even. By pressing X you can activate the offset even, and then you can hold on Shift and give that some more extrude. That's enough. So this is the basic shape that we are going to cover right now. You can hold on, select this face and hold on Ctrl and plus to select further faces, and then I like to move it down. So G and Z, and hold on Shift to move it down. So I like to make this area a little bit thinner. Okay, that's perfect. Now what else can we do? So for here, I like to press Shift D to take a duplication of this face. Okay. And then we right click and we press P to separate that part. Then we go to object mode, and you notice that we have got two faces. So this one is the duplication one. So now we select that and we go to edit mode. We press A to select it, and we want to extrude it out. So I like to extrude just a little bit, not too much. And at the same time, I like to use the hotkeys, which is or the numpad 1, 3, 7, and 9, which you can read those from here, which allows me to look at from different orthographic angle. So this one is from top. So I like to move the whole object a little bit towards the x-axis, toward the right side. That's perfect. Now I like to add another loop cut. I like to add a loop cut by pressing Ctrl I, and then we press 2 for H, and I grab this H, G, and move it up. Something like this we have got. We can grab it and move it up a little bit more. Now it's perfect. So this is the blocking stage that we want to block out whatever we want to create. So for the next part, if I just go to if I switch to wireframe, I like to select this top edge, and I want to move my 3D cursor. You notice that in object mode we have something called for cursor. So the 3D cursor is very important, and it will help us a lot. So we select that, and if I just press Shift and X, we will have this pie menu, which is a lot helpful. And then we will see this cursor to select it. Because we selected that edge, and we want to move through the cursor to that selected edge. So we choose this one and we release it. Now through the cursor is located exactly at the position that we want. Let's go back to edit object mode, or you can still do it in edit mode. But if you press Shift A in edit mode, any object that you add in this section, it will be a part of this object. Now if I just go back to the edit to the object mode, you notice that we have two objects, but it is still counted to one object. Of course, we can go to edit mode again. We press A and we can press P and choose by loose parts, and it will separate it because this is not connected to each other, so therefore it will separate it by loose parts. So that's good to keep in mind. Or we can just model our things in object mode with a new object. So let's add a cylinder. The 32 looks good. Or let's set it to 24, and I like to rotate it 90 degrees in x-axis. Now we go to object mode, to edit mode, and let's move it down. Move it down a little bit, and we press 1 for vertices. We select these vertex and we move those down. At this moment I like to press X, Z and 0, as this allows me to make things flat. So at this stage I like to press X and Y to scale it in Y-axis a little bit more. And then I like to move these up a little bit more. I like to bring in my image reference, so I hover your mouse to see this cursor and then drag to the down bay to the bottom, and then let's set it to image editor. Now I will drag and drop my image reference and then hold on middle mouse to move slide to left and right and pin it. It's a lot easier to have it while we're working. So you can always use numpad 5 to switch between perspective and orthographic. So it will help you definitely a lot. Here we can add it. Let's right click and swap the area, and then let's right click and join this area. Make here, so we need a little bit of room here. Even you can just move it really close to just see these assets, because we don't need it right now too much. And let's make more room here and open up another panel. We set it to 3D viewport, and now we can press 5. Let's set this one as well to flat, and we go and turn on cavity and shadow fit these, and then let's turn off all the overlays. Now we can see a time lapse of these while we are adjusting the model in the 3D viewport, so it is good to have it. Now let's add more details. So first of all, these bigger column. For that we can use a cube, enter tab, enter edit mode, and we scale it down. We can look, take a look from top orthographic. The column size should be okay. Around these, we select this upper part and we move it up slightly. Now we look at from top and hover your mouse on this object and press L. And now we press Shift and D to duplicate it, and then you use X to just move it along the X-axis. If I just press A, because we are in edit mode and we just copy it in edit mode, so we can press A to choose to select everything. And the same thing, press 7 to look at from top of the graphic, Shift D, G, again G and Y. That's perfect. If you want to play around with the scale, make sure to set the transform pivot point to individual origin, because now it allows you to scale those individually. If you want to make it bigger or smaller, that will help you definitely. So let's select all these top faces in wireframe mode, and now it's perfect. So let's hover our mouse on this object, press L to take a duplication, and I like to press P to separate that by selection. And now we right click to set the origin, because its origin is right here. If I just scale, you will see it will scale based on that. So each object in Blender has an origin point, and the scale and rotation will be actually based on that. So right click, go to set origin, into geometry. Now the origin is at the center of this object. Let's look at from this angle, and I want to enter tab. I want to make these a bit longer. Okay, good. And we can set it back to origin again. And now at this time, let's see, we can press Ctrl and 3 to look at from the back side of this. Let's make some more room here. Let's move this. Okay, so now let's continue. I like to move the origin point of this to the bottom, and right click set origin to 3D cursor, so we can use 3D cursor to relocate the origin point. Now we press R and enter tab. We select it, GG 2 times. In this situation, we can fix it easily by extruding once, and then we press 1 for vertices and just move it slightly back on its position. And this one, move it up. So we can press, grab it by G and press Z 2 times, because it will move in local x-axis. So we have global and we have local. Local means the object's own direction. So G, Z, Z. And I want to recenter this, because the next column that I will copy. So let's scale it down a little bit, since we don't want to have to I mean, since we want to create a bit thinner than the previous one, and this one looks good, so let's leave it as it is. Let's play around with it a little bit more. It's perfect. Now we can mirror it, or we can just actually select it and we rotate it 180 degrees, and then we merge it manually. Press L, move it in y-axis. Just take a look what is happening here. So of course you can scale those by setting the transfer pivot point to bounding box at least. So this is what we have got. Let's move it in x-axis, because later we will add these tiling style. I think the height of this building is too much, so let's grab both of these objects. We go in edit mode and let's move them down a little bit. Let's just scale the base part of the house inside a little bit. Now the rest of the part is easier. We just need to duplicate it. But before duplicating, let's complete this area. So we want to take another duplication of this, for example of this part, Shift D, R for rotation, and want to scale it a little bit down, and let's move this area, then move it inside. As I said, at any time you can scale these GG, move them up a little bit. Let's duplicate it. Look at from top of the graphic, Shift D, and we move it in x-axis. And let's move this one in x-axis inside a little bit. Or let's outside instead. So for this one, for this part, we can select the base house, and then let's press 3 and we select these two faces. Take a copy of those by Shift and D, then press P to separate that part. After that, select it and enter tab and press Alt and E, or before that, let's think a little bit more. We press Shift and H, or let's press numpad / to hide it. And we want to actually shape these. So how we can do that? Well, we press 1 for the vertices, and we press E for extrude, and we extrude a little bit, and make sure to set the transfer pivot point to bounding box, and scale it a little bit. E for extrude once again, and right click to cancel it, but we have still that in this place, and move it down a little bit, and yeah, that's fine. And for here you can see that it is not a hard edge like this, but we have got a smoother, so that's very easy. You can press 2 for edge. Once you select that edge, you can press Ctrl and B to bevel that by a few segments. Now let's open up this menu, and you can set this segment to 2 or 3 and make these round shape. You can even set it to 4 and just play around with these. Oh, you notice that we have got a little bit of problem, but That's an easy fix. You just need to select these edge, and because, or let's delete whatever we have here. Let's select these area, this edge. I don't know why this problem has been stored, but let's take a copy and separate that and delete this one. And now we have just a single line. Now we can extrude this in this direction. Numpad slash again. Just take a look at from top orthographic, enter tab, and just move it to fill this area completely. Now we have got these, okay, and the rest is too easy. Let's click on this modifier, and we need actually the modifier, so let's move it, and we go and add a solidify modifier, and we play around with the thickness, and we let's enter tab, we select everything, and we press M and by distance. So this will help in some case, but if it's still you've got this problem, then we have to try another thing, and that's the face angle. So let's set the face orientation, and we press numpad slash. Let's turn it off, and you can see that we have got these two faces, their normals have been flipped. So we press A first to select everything, then we press Alt and N, and we choose recalculate outside, and now it's fixed, and you can see that it will work very good. Numpad slash again and turn it off. So now we can work on this area and these two. Let's select them by holding them shift, enter tab, and just go to edit mode, press 1. Let's move these two down. That's good for now. And let's scale the house just a little bit in x-axis, because I need more depth in this area to see the 3D dimensional more clearly, and I like to right click the region to geometry and scale it as well towards this way. And of course we can play around with these so that we can add a little bit of thickness, not too much, and move it up, and that's fine. So the next part is this one that we need to add it once again, and that's an easy fix. We can just duplicate it once again and play around with the X and Y. Of course we don't need to do each of these step by step, since we can actually create our own stylized house. So now I like to grab these edges, these two edges, and scale them in y-axis a little bit more. And of course we can move it down. So at this place we can add a bevel to make these edges a bit smoother, like so, and we can add the bevel for other parts as well. such as here. And if I just add bevel to each of these, it takes time, but there is another fastest way. Hold down shift and select whatever object you need to add the bevel, and then select one that has this bevel. For example, this one is solidify, but this one has the bevel. Then Ctrl L and copy modifier. Now all of these parts has got the bevel, but this one will lose. Actually, we need bevel. Of course, we need the solidify modifier to complete it. Now it's better. So let's enter tab. We choose this one, Shift D, R, negative 90 degrees. Take a look from top of the graphic. Scale it in Y-axis. Scale in X-axis and move it. Let's take it to this area. We can of course move it in Z-axis. We want to create this small part. Press 2 and grab it like so. Enter tab, Shift D, RZ 180 degrees, and let's move it another copy to this part, to opposite part. So let's see what else can we add. Let's take another couple duplication of this area. Let's work on this area first. Shift D. We want to make it smaller and move it in Y-axis, move it down. Press 2 for H, G, Y, and move it inside this bigger wood plank. So another cool thing is that we can select all these and we can press Ctrl J to merge them. And now this is only one object. Enter tab, we select this area, Shift and D, then X, and move it in X-axis. So notice that amount of the bevel for this area is too much, so we can separate that. Separate these two parts by pressing P and by selection. And then we can hold on Shift and play around with the bevel. Now we have less bevel to this part, but we have a stronger bevel amount on the other objects. Now let's add these, work on this door, or let's add those other parts. Yeah, so let's work on the door. So for that we can select the house and we move the 3D cursor to the center of that, and we choose a cylinder. 24 should be good. Rotate it in Y-axis and scale it down. Now let's look at from this angle to see it clearly. Scale it down, move it up, and the shape of this is actually that's you that will decide how the shape, if it's gonna be like some shape we have here. If you want to look at like a root or a sphere or linear, so the shape of your frame of the door or the window. So that's something personal, but let's turn it off. And we want to select these, and we want to use proportional editing. G, grab it and make it something like this. We can make it really effective, but let's leave it as it is. We scale it down a little bit, turn it off. Proportional editing will help you a lot. And we scale it down. Let's scale it down a little bit, down again. And now let's move it in front in x-axis. And we scale it in x-axis again. So for the door frame, as you will see, you can hold on Alt and select this frame. Press Shift and Z. Let's select these bottom first and delete those. And of course the back part. You can move these a little bit closer. And now press 3, hold on Alt and select these loop edge or loop face, sorry, and press Alt and E and choose extrude face along normals. Of course you can press S to, you'll see a little bit of fixing we have. And let's expand it more. So we have the offset from here. You can change it. Something around this should be fine. Now let's hold on Alt again, and now we want to extrude it towards E, towards X. So we have got, actually, we have to press Ctrl Z to undo that, and hold on Alt and select this face from here. Hold on Alt, and we have to hold on Ctrl to deselect these faces at the background. Then we press E to extrude it. Something around this, and let's hold on Ctrl and deselect this area, and let's extrude it once again a little bit. Look at from front of the graphic. Now we can press G and we want to move these down. And move this down as well. Then press Ctrl and R, add loop cut, select these to edge and extrude them once more. Of course, if you want to make this edge a little bit smoother, we can select these two and move them down like so, and then we press E and extrude this area again. The last touch for this is to select these vertices and move them down, and you can hold on Ctrl to snap at this edge. And then let's press or we can actually use one of these spaces. Yeah, so let's move through the cursor in between these area, and we press Shift and A, add a cube. Scale that cube. Scale it in X and in Y. Move it in X. Scale it down again. We can press P to separate that part, or we can leave it as it is a part of this object. And now we can actually use some modifiers. First, let's not press number the slash. We can clean up a little bit of unnecessary faces, such as this area. Hold on Alt and select it. Hold on Control to deselect this area, and then remove whatever you have selected. Once again, I moved these down. Let's move this area down. Now let's work on this window. For creating this sort of low poly window, we can use a very cool method. Let's add a plane. Focus on this plane, and in edit mode, scale it down, and want to take a copy first of these, and let's work on this one. Now let's right click and subdivide it once. After subdividing, we press 2 for edges, and we choose these for actually edges, and we bevel them by Ctrl and B. We try to bevel them, and we set the segment to 1. Now we can play around with it width, and since these represent with these with planks inside the windows, which is separating the glasses. Now let's extrude it out. Of course, you can play around with it how high do you want to display it, but let's press 3. You notice that we have some other actually faces here, so we can remove those, or let's keep it as it is. So now we have got this very interesting actually shape. Of course, we can press Ctrl Z to undo it, and we can make it once again so that we can get a very chunky and thick wood planks for these. Something around it should be fine. And now if we extrude, that's fine. Now to make it round like this, we can press Shift Z to move to in actually what is called for wireframe mode. Oh, I just get confused. So then we press 1 for vertices. We grab these 4 vertices. Let's press L and remove these by X, and now I like to take another duplication of these, since I want to make this one round and this one just the top part round, so the bottom area we will leave it. So now we press Ctrl Shift and B to bevel the vertices. Now we can edit segments, and we can play around with the width to make it really round. But for this one, we can press Ctrl Shift and B just for these 2 parts. So that's how you can create the window. You can play around with this. And let's select both of those, press M and choose merge by distance. Now you'll see 12 vertices have been removed. In this way we can clean those up. So now what else can we do? Let's extrude it to create these last part as well to complete it. And with that we can actually select all of these bevel and of course we can select and grab each of these. So now let's press in E to extrude. In this way. And then E for extrude, and we want to scale them, but make sure to set it to individual and scale them. Don't worry about overlapping, we will fix it later. And then press E once again. Okay, now let's press L on these and move it a little bit towards this way. And now I like to select this area. Or let's press 3 for face, scale it, and move it up. For the bottom we can select everything and set it to bounding box Y and 0. So S, Y and 0. So that's a quick fix. So you notice that we have got some thing there, but we need to replace those in a good place. So let's select these two in edit mode, press P and by loose parts. So select both of those, right click and set origin to geometry. Now both of these has their own geometry. Let's move both of these to this side, and I like to grab this one, shift S, selection to cursor, because the 3D cursor is already there, and RX 90 degrees. Let's look at from front orthographic, scale it down a little bit. And that's fine, we can leave it as it is. Just move it a little bit closer to the wall so they stick to the wall. That's perfect. Now for this one, let's grab this face, press Shift S and cursor to select it. Grab this one now, Shift S, selection to cursor, RX 90 degrees, scale it down. Look at from top, move it, scale it down. I believe we can move these a little bit upper in the sky. And now let's grab it, and we want to select both of these faces which we have got inside, and we press I for inside the face. Something around this. Oh, let's first delete the bottom face if we have anything. So we haven't anything. I'll select these faces, I for inside the face, Don't worry about the rest, we will fix it later. Okay, that's great. And then we want to actually, let's see, Alt any face along normal. Extrude them in. Let's move it. So let's move these faces. So there is a lot of faces. There is a lot of vertices that we have got. So let's move these down a little bit. Now press I once again. And now we haven't that issue. Alt E, face along normal. If you want to make the actually this area a little bit thicker, you can do that by pressing Ctrl I. And now it should be fine. Alt E, face along normal a little bit. That's great. Let's delete all these faces and delete those. S, Z, and 0. Make them flat. Very fast. Let's grab these two, and I think we need to actually extrude it once again to have more depth inside. Let's scale it in y-axis just a little bit more. Now let's snap the window. So it looks like part of it. Now let's grab one of these slats. For example, this one. Shift D, press B to separate it. Right click, set origin to geometry, and now move it here 90 degrees. Enter tab, scale it in x-axis. Move it down. Move it inside. That's fine. We can actually grab everything and make it just a little bit smaller. So let's select these two, make it smaller. Of course, we need to select this one as well. And now you notice that this is going to be, this will match the original reference much more. And then we need to scale it in y-axis a little bit more. Okay, that's fine now. Let's work on this slat. Let's rotate it by 45 degrees. Now let's grab it, Enter tab, Ctrl B, bevel that, loop cut, and let's give that one segment and face along normals once again. Now it's time for adding these like tiling effects. Let's complete these very simplest parts first. Press P and by selection. Add 2 or more loop cuts. Let's make it smaller in size. Let's press Ctrl and Z. Instead choose the sphere. And scale it down. Let's turn it off. Now it's a lot better. Okay, let's keep continue. So for these tiling, we can use a cube, enter tab, scale it down, and scale it in as z-axis. Control 1, one loop cut in x and one loop cut in y-axis. And then if I just move it in y-axis, I can actually add a bevel to it with 2 level up segments. Now if I just look at from this angle, we can enter tab and just make these a bit longer and control that should be fine. I don't like to add too many of actually loop cut. We press Ctrl and R to add a loop cut. Now I like to shape it. That's perfect. Of course, we can change the shape of these to make it more stylized, but we can do it at any time that we want. So now let's go back to object to edit mode, select the entire shape and press Shift and D to duplicate it. Now let's select this area and move them down. Move them down. Now you notice that we have got this very interesting shape. Of course, you can play around with this area to make it more interesting. L and Shift D once again. You can rotate it just a little bit. Now let's select the top one, Shift D, and duplicate it. And Shift Z, switch fast between wireframe mode. And press L, rotate it. Of course, you can scale it in Y-axis a little bit and move it down. You can grab this part and move it back and slide this area. Hold on, control to deselect it, and now you will see it. So make it move it down and move it in front a little bit so that we can have the front area a little bit thicker. Now we press L for each of these parts, or let's press L for this one, and we press Ctrl and L, and to inverse this selection, press Shift and D. Okay, but before that, let's remove everything. I like to select this area, and I like to move my 3D cursor at that position. So let's select it. Let's select this area, and now we enter tab, do all of the previous techniques, Shift D, and now I like to set the transform pivot point to 3D cursor. Now if I just rotate, you will see the rotation will be aligned, applied based on our 3D cursor, RZ 180 degrees, and that this way we will actually do this very interesting job. And now we can press Shift and D to repeat it a few times, and let's press L for each of these, and Shift and D 4 or 3 times. Scale this area a little bit. That's perfect. So now we need some randomization. So for that, you notice that if I just enter out of it, everything looks like each other, like a repetition. So let's break that repetition. Enter tab once again, and we select this area, for example. Hold on, Control to deselect this part, and now let's move it. We can scale it down. Let's set it to individual region. So we're done with this, actually, with the roof part, and now let's work on these smaller roof. Okay, so let's copy. It's just copy and paste, and then playing around with the rotation of these assets. So the best part that we can copy is these a few parts. Okay, so let's press Shift and D, rotate it. Oh, make sure to set it to bounding box RN 90 degrees, because we're looking from top orthographic. By pressing R, the blender will know that we will rotate it based on Z axis. Now it's a good time for adding this bevel, but you notice that when I add bevel it doesn't work properly. So let's see what is the region. We can press A to select everything, choose M and merge by distance. There is no overlapped vertices, so let's add it once again, and we still have got that problem. Check the face orientation, and you notice that we have got this kind of problem. Alt N, face, recalculate face along normal, and turn it off. Now if I just apply a bevel, it will work properly without any problem. Let's keep it to 1. It's good to check the normals. Shift D and move it back, and Shift R. Move it in front closer. Let's have some room. Okay, that's perfect. That will work fine. And now it's time for duplicating this one 3 times. Grab everything, set it to bounding box. Perfect. Now we can press Ctrl J to join them, and we start to change a few things. We are done with most of the modeling part. Now what we need to do is to select whatever we have. It didn't add the bevel modifier to those, so just select them, and then we select the one that we have applied the modifier, the actually bevel modifier to those. So in this case, this is gonna be this one. Then press Ctrl L and copy modifier. Now we can go in the setting of each of these and play around with the mount of the bevel, as this will add a very cool effect around the objects. Now let's work on this ground. So we can actually use the landscape to create a nice background. So we choose, first you need to install it by going to Edit, Preferences, and in the add-on or in the Get an extension, you can type landscape and you will have it. Then click on a button like this, installation, to install it. Then you will find it in your add-ons tab because you install it. So whatever you're installing will be appear here. So you have to search it on Get Extension or in add-ons tab, and then make sure to save your preferences. And once you do that, if you press Shift and A and go to Mesh, you will see it in this list. So let's again start from scratch. Press Shift A, go to a landscape, and in the preset we want to choose Mesa. Mesa is more suitable with our scene. Let's move it and change it once again. And now you can play around with the random seed. So you change it to whatever, to how many seed you like to get a better result. Oh, let's delete this one and Shift S and move through the cursor there. Shift S selection to cursor, scale it up, move it down, scale it. You will see its origin point is set to base, and I like to move it up. Let's press Shift and H, work on the top part of this area. I just like to import it once again, so Shift A, landscape, and now you will see that I made it really flat, which is more suitable with our scene. So the setting is pretty much simple. We just need to go to the under display setting
we play around with these a few slider. So minimum will decide the bottom part of it, and the maximum will decide the topest height of the, and then we have the height control. So then we can play around with the maximum, and of course we can play around with the offset. It allows you to create such as this effect. And now let's press numpad / alt H and numpad /. Now let's remove these because it was just a test that I made. Shift the selection to cursor. We need to scale it up. Scale it up again. And move it down. Put it underneath these. Let's hide it for a second. And I like to move it in front a little bit because we need more space here. Let's try to rotate it and move it in y-axis a little bit. Press Alt H to bring back our hide model. So we have got something like this. Even we can, for example, hide this area, and now we have much cleaner to work with instead of just having these. So we have just a clean landscape. It doesn't have to be 100% like the image reference. Now let's convert the landscape to this rounded landscape. So we have the original one here, and I just play around with these using Remesh modifier. So let's select it, go to modifier, and we find the Remesh modifier, and we want to move to smooth. We have voxel, sharp, and then we can play around with the setting, and we have the blocks. Give it more actually segments. We will see more details, but let's set it to smooth. We can set the actual depth to 8, and we can play around with this to set it to 0.6. And then we have got this very interesting and clean like island. And of course we can set this one to a lower number, so it is just a test, and then we can of course play around with the depth, and we can press Ctrl and 1 to make it smoother by adding one level of subdivision. Now it got more smoother, and by just increasing this number we can make it smoother even. So let's hide it and unhide. Let's hide it and delete it. I just like to show you how this thing will work. Control S to save. And now let's add those other elements. So those assets that we are going to make is the light and this flag instead of this. So the light first, let's add a cylinder, set it to 6 vertices, scale it down, enter tab, select the top face, I for instead of face, if extrude, and if extrude once again, and let's grab this area. Let's if extrude once again, and now Alt and E, face along normal, and let's just take a look. So we want to select the bottom face or the inner face, this area and this area, and we can scale them. So make sure to set it to bounding box. And now let's scale it in z-axis, z direction. It is just a single and is a fix. Now scale it down, if extrude, and if extrude once again, and merge it like this. That's perfect. Now let's work on the inner part. We press 3, select all these faces, and press I for instead of face. Make sure to set it to individual origin, in individual faces, and then press Alt and you choose face along normal. At this stage, we can set it to individual origin and scale it down, and you will see this very interesting lighting. Let's move this ground face to the top, and now we can get rid of this. Hold on Shift and Control to move through the cursor in this position, and we already see that its origin point is located at the very bottom. Shift S selection to cursor. Very nice. We can play around with the size of it. And for the flag, we can actually take a duplication of the same light. Shift D, take a duplication, press B to separate that part so that gonna be a new object. Enter tab. First we need to extrude it in this way, and then select this loop face and expand it. And now let's grab the top part and if extrude and make them fill by pressing F. Add another loop cut and press 3, select one of these faces, or E for extrude a couple of times, and then we need to scale it in the z-axis. That's about modeling this nice and stylized house. So let's talk about the texturing. It's time for texturing. For texturing, we want to use some PBR materials, and PBR materials is actually materials or textures that is created and all the layers is separately, like diffuse, ambient occlusion, roughness, normal. So all of these we will stack on each other to create more depth, stylized, and more realistic material. And once we apply those material to our model, it looks like a real real object in our real world. Of course, in this case, we are not going to use a realistic texture, but a stylized texture to be almost near to the image reference. So for that, we can open up another panel. You notice that if you're in layout, you could, for example, move to texture, to shading or UV editing, but I like things to do in this viewport. Now we want to change one of these to viewport or to actually shader. So let's decide. And then instead of using solid mode, you can press Z to switch between these fastly. We will set it to material preview. And once we set it to material preview, we can open up the viewport shading, and here we can use one of these HDRI which comes with Blender. Of course, you don't have all of these because some of those I manually imported, but let's set it to these Studio Light, which I'm sure every of you has it. So you can play around with the strength. Let's set it to 1.2. You notice that if I just rotate, you will see what is happening. Let's set it to 3D viewport, and we have axis parameter from there. So let's keep it clean, and then we want to turn off all the overlays, make just a bit more room here, and we will see the image reference just very small. And now we want to change this one to shader editor. So we can, for example, use these material properties, but we can actually use it from here. So if I just assign a new material to each of these parts, so it is good to turn it on because it allows us to see whatever we actually are trying to add material. So currently we're trying to add material to these top tiling styles, tiling with planks. And you notice that if I just open it up, we will see these material slot, and the same thing here. If I just change the name to something BB, it will change it automatically to this. So let's name it to wood tile, and it will update it. So we have the same axis for the principal BSDF from here and here. So let's close it. And now if I just change the color, you will see that it will update on our 3D viewport. So we can see it clearly. So this is a very basic adding material, but now let's import our actually textures. You guys notice that I already set up this material, so we can actually delete them. So now I have a collection of full PBR textures, and I call those for, let's make it a smaller, for Stylized. So you can grab these from 3D texture, which is offering these for free. You can download those all the textures and extract them to have them in your drive. So that's a very good website to offer such as free 3D textures. You can donate those if you want, but I like to use a few of these textures, and you can just go to that site and just click on the Stylized. Okay, and once you click on Stylized, all these will pop up because this is the Stylized. And if you didn't see, so we don't want, of course, use all of these, but a few of those. So all of these textures is from 3D texture that you can get it for free. We can actually drag and drop the base color that I have, and we can connect it. As soon as I connect, you will see all these parts is random. I mean, it's not random, it is tiling. You will see these kind of shape here, here, and here. So we can fix those, but let's before play around with the roughness. If the roughness is set to 0, we will get a really glassy effect, but let's set it to almost 0.8 or 0.9 to get less reflection. And then in the specular, let's set the specular to less, like 0.3. The specular will catch the light from surrounding object from the board. So I don't like to catch too much since this is a wood. and we want to set it to a lower number like this. And a note which is really necessary in shading is node wrangler. Make sure to enable this. If it don't have here, you can search for here and install it as the previous information that I gave to you. Once that is done, we press Ctrl and T, it will bring us these two nodes. And now we can play around with the scale, drag from top to bottom, and then hold down Shift to play around with it. In case if you want to scale it up or less, that's up to you. And we press Shift and A, and we choose actually, as we did, if I press Shift A in viewport, we can import object, but Shift A here will import, allows us to import any node that we like. For example, we have the output, color, texture. If we go to color, we can import RGB curve, sorry, and now let's play around with this. Make it a little bit darker. We go to red. I like to add a few points, and now I like to bump it up. So instead of going to Photoshop and manipulate our main texture or in Krita or any other software, we can actually change the hue, saturation of the color, and the brightness and contrast to inside Blender. But we have the tiling, so how we can fix these bad tilings effect. So for that, we can open up another panel and want to set it to UV editor. Once we set it on the UV editor, we now need to select these. For example, let's select this one, and we can select all of these. And you notice that let's talk about it before diving into this. I have assigned this texture to multiple of these objects. That's pretty easy. You can, for example, select the entire shape that we have all the tiles, and then this, hold on Shift and select this one which has the material. Then press Ctrl L on the viewport and choose link material. Now the material will be linked with these as well. Oh, here we have it fast. We have to fix it really fast. Now we've got these applied this material to all of these parts, but let's select this one and we enter tab, select everything, and you will see it. But let's, instead of this, let's choose the texture that we imported. You can search its name and you will see, if you had a lot of this texture, you can just search its name on this top bar, and now you will see that it is all of these is placed in the same place. Therefore we will see the tiling, the repetition is very clean. So let's press 3, and in the 3D viewport we can press U for UV unwrapping, and we can choose angle based, okay, or so this is different types of UV unwrapping, or we can use a smart UV project which gives us this very interesting random UV unwrapping method. So you can try different of these, the cube or followed by camera. So let's choose smart UV project. And this will open up all the UVs and place them in one single place. But the difference between the align is like so. So let's set it to smart UV project. We have project from view as well. So in this case, we can project those from view, and project, and you will see we have got this kind of effect, which will fix our problem a lot. And now let's enter tab, and we want to deselect this area, and I like to do the same thing but from this perspective, and project from view, and then we can scale it. A very clean and nice Unwrapping I've got, but this area is stretched. That's no problem because we are not going to zoom very close. Let's select these and edit mode, select everything by pressing A. In this case, let's try UV Smart Project. It does a good job, but we can still scale this in case if I want to see more details. And we can do the same thing with this one. Scale it more to see more details around it. The next one is the wood planks. You notice that if I just selected, I used one single base color, and there is no actually a mini collision or etc. So I don't like to use it in this case, but for example for the wood, I like to use for the wood planks. So let's assign, and we name it planks, or the wood planks, and we import a new texture. So I will import this kind of image texture that you can find it in the same category that I mentioned, 3D texture. And I like to import all of these except the height, because height is for the displacement, and because I used a very low resolution, so we can't actually display it. So connect the base color, and Control and T. In this case, I like to rotate my texture. So let's go to rotation, and we try to rotate it. So this is not, let's rotate it in z-axis by 90 degrees. And you will see that it is fixed now. Another thing which is important, if I just press N, we go to, let's say, we go to item, and make sure to apply all the scales. Now we have no problem with the scale, but sometimes if the scale value is not 1 and you have got or received different values in the X, Y, or Z axis, make sure to select your object and then press Ctrl and A to apply the scale. Because we changed everything in the edit mode except this, so we can apply the scale, because this will affect our texturing. So let's grab everything and we press Ctrl A, apply the scale. Wow, you notice that we have to be careful because in some area we have applied the modifiers, and modifier, when we apply it, will definitely change. So it actually works good. So let's apply a couple of these. You notice that we have applied the solidify modifier for these. Let's press N, and now we can play around with the solidify modifier. Okay, that's perfect. So now let's go to the wood planks, and I like to select all the parts that we have the wood plank in this area, and then select the wood plank, Ctrl L, link materials. So this area we need to separate it. From this, hold on, Ctrl deselect, then press P to separate that part. Numpad slash and the frame as well, Ctrl L and link material. So you notice that we don't like to assign this material to this place, but that's not a big problem, we can fix it later. And even let's apply that to this area. We can get rid of these two because we're not going to see that, so we just want to take a look at the front side. So want another material for the walls, so we can add it later. Right now let's focus only on the wooden parts. So we have to actually UV unwrap these correctly in order to see the texture working properly. So you notice that I just have my single base color. Later I will import my other, but let's focus on this one, for example, and let's bring them now. So ambient occlusion we have. We can actually import one by one, and it takes a lot of time, so let's get rid of it. And we can select these, hold on Ctrl Shift and T. Why it doesn't work? It should work. Ctrl and T, Ctrl Shift and T. I don't know why this shortcut isn't working, but let's import those manually one by one. And hold on Ctrl and Shift, drag from ambient occlusion to the base color, and it will mix these two automatically. And make sure to drag this slide and connect it to vector to vector. And now you will see something is happening here. So make sure to set it to multiply. And now I just play around with it, you will see something is happening. Oh, let's connect these two, change the place of these two. Now the order was fine. And make sure to set it to none. If you want to manage these, you can hold on Shift and right click to add these vertices. Now that's perfect. Let's set it to 0.8, and now let's bring in those other layers that we have. So that's gonna be the normal and roughness. So the normal, let's connect each of these to their slots. Vector to vector. And roughness to roughness. And normal to normal. We can press and Shift A and search for normal. Oh, this is another normal. Oh, bump. We need to search for bump instead of this normal. And want to set it to height. And you will notice that what is happening already. So we don't need too much of this strength, but just a little bit. And you notice that the roughness will you can hold on Ctrl and Shift with left click to see a preview of these texture of the roughness only. So you can press Shift A and search for ramp color, and with the help of the ramp color you can control the power of your roughness. Just take a look at here. So now the darkest area represent for the glassiest part, so you have to press Ctrl and Shift to see the effect of this as well. So since we don't like to see too much of reflection, we need to move a little bit closer. Just play around with the sliders. So we don't like to see it actually reflected. So let's set it to almost there, and now we will kill that reflection. That's perfect. Later I will use another node which is really helpful. But now let's go to material preview and press /, and this will be applied for all the rest of our wood planks. Now what we need to do is just UV unwrap those correctly. So let's go with the Smart UV unwrap. And in this area I like to rotate it 90 degrees. Now it's a lot better. So for this area we want to use this kind of texture later. Let's work on this part. So that's looking good. For this area, enter tab, select it, U and a Smart UV project. Let's rotate it 90 degrees. Now we've got a lot better. We can scale them out, and you notice that we can change the background to this one to see what is happening. And for example, we can select this one and we press U and Q projection, or let's U and base align 90 degrees, and we can just move it around like so. Smart UV project once again, and rotate it 90 degrees. Now let's work on this part. U and Smart UV project. We can rotate it by 90 degrees. That's a lot better. So for this inner part we can use something else. Scale it a little bit. And let's UV unwrap this part as well. But you notice that we have to apply the solidify modifier. So we can click on apply, or we can press Ctrl A by hovering my mouse on the solidify. But we will keep the bevel as it is. U and Smart UV project. 90 degrees. I can rotate it 90 degrees. or I think we can divide it into two parts. So notice that we press hold down Alt, and we want to select the top edge, right click and choose Mark Seam. With the help of Mark Seam, now we can select this area, U and unwrap. Okay, and then we can just rotate it to get a better perspective of these. And let's do the same thing, U and unwrap. And we have to rotate it 90 degrees. And let's work on this a little bit more. So we can enter tab, hold down Alt, select the entire shape, and we want to just rotate it by 90 degrees so that we get a better result. Now it's a lot better, you will see it matches better. And then let's turn it on again. Control S to save it. So let's check what else can we do. Oh, we just forget to assign it on this window. Let's go to edit mode, select the window, U, and Smart UV project. So let's select the faces or the glasses. We can assign a new color to those. Let's open up the color properties or material properties. Click on this plus and new and assign it. Name it glass. And let's set it to blue so that we can see this is gonna be a glass. You notice we have got this kind of issue. We will fix it later. And let's do the same thing. Edit mode, select all these faces. And from here, we just need to find it. Oh, we need to select it, set it to width blank. So for assigning the glass, let's open up the material properties. We click on this plus and we choose the glass and assign. Let's hold down shift and select these two, and now set it to glass and assign it. Let's see, so everything looking very good. And now let's get rid of it. Okay, so we will work on the glass material later, but now let's work on this darkest material with the wood planks. So this is going to be this one. Okay, so I like to choose or click on this double paper icon, and it's take a copy of this. So plank, we can name it to dark planks. Okay, so now if I just change it, let's go and change it to something else. Let's bring RGB curves and we set it to this area. And now with this one we can control, or we just could, for example, select it and paste it before after base color, but that's gonna be working fine as I just play around with it. We don't want to make it too dark. Let's go to red.
And that's fine. Now we've got this nice and reddish color. For this area I'm not too happy, so let's select it. And of course we have the same issue. And I like to rotate it by 90 degrees. Now we fixed that problem. I'm going to choose these darkest or dark wood plank to assign it for the door and for this area. So let's choose the door, select this frame, and let's open up the menu and just find the dark and assign it. You notice that we have assigned it successfully without any problem. And let's do the same thing for this area. And we want to select, so we have to divide it by Ctrl and R. So let's focus on it. Let's select this wood plank as well, because this is the border which allows us to see from which part we can actually divide it. So let's press K for knife tool, and then assign, and then press enter. And now with the help of the knife tool we have divided these two pieces. Now let's click on this plus, we go and choose the dark plank and we assign it, and that's it. Now let's press number the slash back again. This one, it's not looking too great. Okay, but let's work on it a little bit more. Let's press L and choose these two. Let's turn off bevel for a second. You see, everything is working properly, but we can fix that. Hold on Ctrl to deselect this area. Press S and scale it. You can move it around to find a good position. And for this one, I like to rotate it by 90 degrees. And now it's better. But for this area, we can actually look at from front orthographic and U and choose project from view. Now it's fine. U for this area and Smart U project. But since we are not seeing it clearly, so we can just skip it out. Okay, that's great now. It's a lot better, as you notice. But as soon as I apply this bevel modifier, we will get some issue. So let's play around with this to get less issue. The same thing for this area. Let's work on the door frame. I like to change its position to somewhere around here. And let's select it again. Look at from this angle. I like to select all these parts.
And let's go to and assign a new, and we choose the wood tile and assign it. Now let's press Z and we go to material properties, and we will see it clearly what is happening here. If I turn it off, everything works really good as we wanted. Of course, we can change a few setting, such as moving this one down, or let's grab all these vertices instead of just selecting the edge and move it down. Now it's a lot better. Now we have to use a less subtle effect of these, or we can assign more geometry to these. That's perfectly fine. Okay, we need one more material for, let's work on this area as well. I like to rotate it by 90 degrees. Now it's fixed. The direction is perfect now. So one more material. Let's work on this area, make it a little bit larger. All these and make those a little bit larger by scaling down the islands, and we can move them. Much better. Let's work more on these. So now we need to add a base color for the wall. For the base house, I have another very interesting material. Let's show you. If I can find it. That's right here, this material, which is very interesting. So let's bring it in. First, we need to create a new. We name it a wall. And we drag one by one. Or we can select all of these except the height and import them. So ambient occlusion and base color should be mixed. Set it to, let's say, multiply, and connect it to this. Control T, and now connect all these to the vector. So let's choose the background, the same texture that I chose. We go to edit mode, and for the front, so we need to front side first and this back side. Let's look at from this angle, and so look at from front orthographic and U and project from view. Now let's scale this, press A to select both of the islands, and you just scale it up. So of course we have some problem. You notice that everything is
fine, but we will see a less effect of that. That's because of the actually ambient occlusion. Let's invert it now with this fix. So we see almost 100% of the effect of ambient occlusion. And now let's connect the rest. Let's close this and move these up a little bit. Base color of the normal to normal. And of course we need to move the position of these two. And the roughness to roughness. And you will see very nice and clean material. Let's add a bump. Connect it to height. And it is important to set these to none. You can control it by ramp color. Press Shift A, ramp color. And now we have full control over it. Now it's time for selecting the sidebars. And it is already selected, but let's move those. Let's move them. So we need to delete the bottom face since we don't need it. And now we need to move it a little bit downward. I like to match it with this one. So let's match. G and match it. Try to match it. That's perfect now. Very nice and stylized texture. Control S to save it. We can select all of these and press H to hide or unhide. As the viewport that we use. So that's around the wall. Let's press numpad / focus more on it, and you will see it clearly what is happening. At this area we see more of these tiling, which is a lot nicer. We can scale it if you want to see it more in this way as well. Now it's a lot better. So now let's select this part and we will assign the wood, the wall again to this area, but we need to unwrap it. So let's select it and Smart UV unwrap. So this is what we have got. Let's focus on it. Or let's use project from view, and now we can scale it up a lot better. So if you want to see those tiling, just move it slightly up to see it. And of course, for this area, we want to apply the same thing. Select this one and the back side. Want to press U. Let's look at from front orthographic and project from view. And let's change it. Assign it and assign the wall to this area. Make it scale it bigger. If you want to put more time fix this issue that we have got in the back, you can do that. But I will focus mostly on the front side. I like to work on this column, the scale of it. Let's even wrap it this way and rotate it by 90 degrees. You can scale them down. Scale it up the island to get different result. That's perfectly fine. Then we have these two objects that we have created. Let's work on the glass, since this is not too interesting. Let's make it a little bit darker. And we can turn on, set it to really low. And you can play around with the transmission, but I will turn it off. Now it's fine. Of course, you can play around with the emission. Give that a light value and play around with the emission. Yeah, it's perfect. Control S to save it. Now let's work on these two. For the flag, let's select a simple color. We name it to metal. And we set it to a really dark color with less reflected light. Let's make it even more darker. And I will assign it to this one as well, metal. But let's play around with the roughness to have it to something like this. And let's select these two and hold on Control and plus, then choose this red color. It's too low poly, so I'll try to make it a little bit higher poly and some more polygon to it. Scale it down. Control B to make it smoother. Of course, we can use a bevel modifier to make these smoother. And now let's work on the landscape or the floor. So for the floor, we can assign a new material. Let me to floor, or let's name it to landscape, since we use the landscape material. For landscape, you can use this kind of grass material. So let's import it. As you see, I imported this texture for the grass in the same way as I imported the rest. So that's easy to import. And now I like to play around with the color, with the hue of this, to bring it closer to this color. For that, we zoom closer to this area. So let's go to color, and we choose this hue saturation and connect it to the base color, or this is ambient occlusion. So let's connect it to base color and get rid of it and delete it. So for the base color, we just need to play around with the value. And if we set it to 1, you will see we have got a very closer color to what we have in the image reference. You can see that I used two kind of material. A part of it is rocky, and a part of this is applied grasses. So how we can achieve this effect and mix two kind of pure texture in Blender. So let's get rid of this one, and now we have only this single base color with the previous setting. Let's make a little bit of room, and we zoom closer. We select all these entire nodes. We press Shift D, take a double click. Let's move this output closer, and first I need to replace this. So we need to replace this texture with the rack that I've downloaded. So let's do it. Now I've imported this. Now let's connect these two, mix these two principal BSDF with each other. So for mixing this, we hold on Control, Shift, and right click from one to other. It will mix these automatically with this mix shader. So it will share 50-50 for now. And now if I just zoom closer, set it to 0, you will see the grass. Set it to 1, you will see the rack. Now we can play around with the size of the rack by going to the scale and change the size of that how you prefer. Okay guys, I just quickly decided to change it to something else instead. And now we can play around with the color of this RGB to make it a little bit warmer. Okay, now the magic will come into place right now, and that's by pressing Shift A and importing an image texture. Connect the color to the factor and click on New. We name it to mask, and we can use multiplied by 2, star by 2, and turn it up. So let's set it to black. And now when we set it to black, it will show us only the first texture. So now from this moment we have to switch to the actually texture paint mode. So let's press tab. Well, let's go from here to the viewport, and then we press tab and we go to texture paint mode. Let's drag it to the bottom, And now we see clearly all the parts of our object. Let's make a little bit of room and turn the display off. So now let's I'm using a graphic tablet, so it's a lot easier to paint. So for that, we to start painting, make sure to select it. Make sure to first select your object. So select it first and go to texture paint. And now right click and you will see that we have selected these white. And with white, we only can actually paint whatever we have underneath it. And then other things that is good to keep in mind is that the actually if you want to use a graphic tablet, make sure to turn on pen pressure for both of those. Otherwise, if you are using mouse, so you can't enable these. Even if you enable, so you don't receive any effect out of that. So let's take a look exactly at the image reference and paint based on that. So we can press F to play around with the size. We can press Shift and F to play around with the strength. So we can start from this area and we slightly change it. So let's set it to almost 0.7 to see a little bit of smooth variation. And now we start to paint smoothly and carefully. So once we reach at this stage, we want to actually use a bigger radius by pressing F. Okay, let's complete the mission. Very interesting. So make sure after you actually paint it, make sure to save your changes. So once you saved it, or you can just save it from here. Now it's time to go back and we press Ctrl and Space to see what we have got so far. Everything works really good. And let's press Tab and we go to object mode and select everything and focus on it. So notice that everything is done in viewport, which is really fast and real time. So finally we select everything by pressing A, right click and shade out to smooth. Now it is in 3D viewport and in material, but if we switch to render mode, this is what we will get. So there is no lighting except just using a single HDRI, which I already uploaded. But let's use Blender HDRI. We can navigate to different lighting. So there we didn't add any lighting. It's just the power of HDRI. I've created a different course about the lighting and the stylized creation that you can check it out. I will absolutely put the link in the description.
The Ultimate Blender Hand Painting Course Bundle is here. Dear friends, are you ready to become a professional in hand painting and take your digital art skills to the next level? Introducing our new Hand Painting Course Bundle, a comprehensive journey that takes you from the basic to mastery. In this bundle, you will learn 3D modeling, UV unwrapping, professional hand painting, lighting, animating, and rendering all in one complete course.
Make sure to check the link in the description. Now let's press Ctrl Space again and let's get rid of a few of these panels that we have, since we don't need those anymore. So this is our final result until now, but we can make it better by adding some more light to it. This is the scene that I worked on it with the lighting and a few nodes setup, which can be a little bit of advanced setup than we have used in the previous videos. So let's first talk about the lighting. If I turn it on and press Ctrl space, let's turn off again all the overlays, you will see that I have added a bunch of lights. And if I just select all the lights and we press M, I create a new collection and I just put all the lights into it. If I just turn it on and off, just take a look what is happening. A lot better after lighting. So you notice that just a few simple lighting how will affect our world and our scene. So that's really important to keep in mind. And another thing is about combination of different nodes to make our node more beautiful. For example, if in this case I just plug this one into this, so this is the node set up the material that we had before, and now the after. You will see these very interesting lines around it that make the material pop up. Of course we could work more on it to get rid out of this repetition so that we don't see the outliner everywhere but some places. But I will just finish the tutorial somewhere around here and to don't make it too long to can be boring. So first let's talk about this material setup, and then we want to talk about the lighting. So for the material setup, I just took a duplication of these, okay, and for this secondary duplication I just made these darker. You can press hold Ctrl and Shift to see how it is affecting. So this is really bright and this is really dark. And then this one is the first setup that we had before. It is lighter and brighter. And then we mixed both of the principal BCF using a mixed color. And the magic is from this moment will start. So let's bring it here. And the magic is by using these few nodes. Bevel geometry goes into color math or vector math. We can find it somewhere around here, so let's find it. We just name math, and vector math is in the converter. So let's go to the converter and we will find the vector math, and we set it to dot product. So let's start creating that from scratch so that it can be easier for you to follow along. I just like to move it to the side, and let's connect this one to the surface. And now you will see that if I set it to 0, we will use the darkest point and the brightest point when it's set to 1. So let's search for bevel first, the first node that we want. And you have to notice that these nodes will only work when you are using cycle render engine. You notice that I use cycle, not Eevee. Let's move it up, and the next one is geometry node. This is not that geometry that you're thinking, geometry node, but this is something else. And then we want to add the math vector that I talked about it, and then we connect all the normals to the normal, and then we search for a range, map range color. Okay, and connect the vector to value. Once everything is done, we just need to plug it into the factor of the final result. Hold on Control and Shift and left click on these, and you will start to see some interesting thing that is happening. First of all, you can play around with the let's make some room. First of all, you can play around with the, let's get rid of it, radius. Hold on Shift and play around with the radius, and you notice you will achieve a good effect. And then in the dot product, in the vector math, we have to set it to dot product in order to make these possible to work. So you notice that it doesn't work until now, until we connect it to the value. So now it is starting to work. But now let's work on from minimum, from maximum, and to minimum. So this is the setting that I've used. So let's play around with it. With the minimum, we can play around with it. So we need actually a black and white edge. For the blackest area, we can use the first material, and for the second one we can use another material. So it's actually, we have to play around with it. So I used these values to control it easily. So for the radius we use 0.7 almost to have a really big large stroke around our objects. And then for the mapping, for the map range, I used, so that depends on your scale of your model. Okay, that's not, you can actually copy and paste it and it will work for you. No, because maybe for you the scale of your model is something different, so you have to manually play around with this value to get a good result. So once you do that, you get a good result out of it. Just press Ctrl and Shift and left click on it, and you notice what a beautiful look we have got. Of course, you can at any time you can go and play around with a color that you prefer. Make it really red to pop up out, and of course you can play around with a slot. Now let's put this slot in a negative direction. Now we see the darkest area at the edges, which is not cool. So I like to inverse it. I like to see the darkest area in the center. Okay, and let's make it a little bit brighter. That's fine. So now with this method we can use to drive the wooden slots as well. So for this we just need to select these and not this one. I mean just the base color and not anything else. And of course the mapping node and the texture coordinate. And then we want to mix it as we did for the first material for this guy. And then I like to take a duplication of this, Shift and D, and paste it, and let's select it, copy it by Ctrl and C, and paste it right in this new node. Let's move it out a little bit, move them down, and drag and connect it here. So let's play around. So it doesn't work because both of the base color is in the same level. So we can actually go and add a RGB curve and make this one darker. So now you notice if I just play around with the slider, this one is really dark. Oh, it's really dark. So let's make it a little bit dark, less dark. So let's continue. So we want one of these should be dark. Okay, so let's select it, and you notice that this part, let's grab this one as well, is represent the lightest area, and it is underneath it. Okay, and then second slot. So we can do the same thing for here. So we make this slot brighter, and we want to leave the first one as it is, or in case if you want, you can just make it a little bit darker, just a little bit in touch. And now we can connect these to factor, and you are starting to see what is happening. So you see actually the brightest point, but because this one is not too dark, we can't see it clearly. Now we will start to see it more clearly. Even we can make it like so. That's great. So we almost applied for all the details, and that's definitely fine. So that's about this setup of this material. That will help you a lot. Now it's time for actually the lighting. Let's go to viewport, and for the lighting you will see that I added multiple lights, and each of these has different power. So we can add light by pressing Shift A in viewport, and we go and add area light or point light. But before that, if I just go to the shader editor, and from here we go to Word, you notice that I use one nice HDRI. Yeah, so the HDRI that I use, I actually download these from HDRI Heaven. You can just try any HDRI that you like, but I use this Urban Street, which you can see it. Let's find it. Urban Street. Yeah, this is the Urban Street. So this is the Urban Street. Okay, and the strength of that is set to 2, and you just need to play around with the z-axis, and yeah, that's everything about the HDRI. And you notice that if I just go to HDRI, we turn it on and off, how HDRI will affect your word. That's really affect our scene. So let's set it to 2 to kill out these very darkest point. We can set it to 1, but I prefer to use 2. And now let's talk about this lighting.
Hello friends, your automated Blender bundle is here. Take your skills from beginner to pro with our exclusive 5-course bundle. Are you ready to elevate your 3D skills to professional highest? Introducing my Blender Mastery Bundle, featuring 5 of my best courses ever, designed to transform you into a 3D powerhouse. Whether you are starting from scratch or refining your craft, this bundle covers it all, the key to creating stunning professional quality renders.
So make sure to check those out as well. The link is in the description. You can purchase directly from my website. Now it's time for the lighting. You notice that if I turn the light collection on and off, how good the result we will achieve by adding these a few lights. Let's turn them off one by one, and you can see that I added actually this light from front side, and it is not actually 100% from front, but it is added from the corner of this house, In this case, we will achieve a feeling of 3D dimensional, because this will actually brighten up this area more, and then this area in the front we will see the darkness. So we can even bring it up to 25, so you can add the lights from from pressing Shift A and go to light and add the area light, and then click on these setting to change the color, power and size. And you notice that I used actually a medium size for this. Let's set it to individual, and the size of the light is very important as well. So in case if I just make the size really tiny, I will receive a very sharp shadows, and once I make it bigger, the shadows will be converted to very smooth shadows. So we can have a combination of both of these, and in case if you want to use a warmer, you can do that. And then let's duplicate it once more and make it really large, so we can now use these two as our key light. And of course we can play around with it to get a little bit of cooler tone as well, since the word surrounding will affect. So that's about it. And then we can select these two, name it to key light, and the key light is the most brightest light, and if I say that will affect the scene or the object just by itself, even if it don't add any other lights. And then here we have added the backlight, if I say, and the backlight is too much, you will see the edges or the edge light color as well, and these will actually create a highlight or a stroke around our object or around our light that help the object be separated from the background. And you notice that I used a very high power, such as 3000 with a really warm color, and I used and you notice that some of these is closer and some of these is bigger in size, and some of those is bigger in size, smaller in size. So all of these is affecting our scene. Let's continue. If I just select the light, you will see that instead of these having these like a glassy effect, I just duplicate it and change the base color, and in the emission setting I just set it the strength to 1 and with a warm color, and I took a duplication edit mode and put it to 1 right here. So let's change these, and we click on these slats and we set it to light. Now you'll see that it will update. We can scale it, but let's have these here smaller. Okay, and everything looks perfect. So if I just switch to so if we could use Eevee, so because we used actually emission, we would see very glowy around this light or lantern. I have another lighting method that cover volumetric lights. If I enable it, you will see these magic will happen. Wow, that's very nice. And that's because I used this cube and I assigned a volumetric light to it, volumetric principle to it. Let's turn it off. First, I like to move my 3D cursor at the center of these, and we press Shift and A and add, as let's say, spot. If it's good, let's add a spot, and we choose a warmer light. And of course we need to play around with the strength, and you will notice that we have something that is hitting the ground. We can scale it, and then we can play around with the radius. Wow, now it's a lot better. So let's hold on shift and play around with the radius in order to achieve a better result. And then we have the yeah, everything is okay. So now let's turn it on, and we will see these very interesting results. Okay, so to assign these interesting effect, we need to first move through the cursor to the world origin, and we add a cube. We scale the cube, scale it up, move it up, and then we need to go to the shader editor with the cube selected, click on new, and make sure to delete this principal BSDF and search for volume, principal volume. Connect the volume to volume, not to surface, and just play around with this to set it to a lower number, very low, even lower than this. Oh, it didn't let us to make it lower than that. To 1. Oh, to a very subtle effect we will get. It's a really nice effect that I love that a lot. Let's set it to, yeah, 3 should be fine. So we should change it in case if you want to see these stars around it. That's not gonna be show you in the render, but you can actually try to add it by another method. So that's a very simple effect. We can use a sphere with a very low of these dots. I actually have a tutorial for creating AI animation. So now in edit mode, let's go to edit mode, and we press shift and D to duplicate it. So how we can make those now like a star blinking. So first we need to assign a new actually color to those, or we could use this same light color and assign it. Now if I just change to render mode, you will see we have got something interesting. We can of course set the transform pivot point to individual origin and scale those individually. And now we just see those very small, even smaller than that by holding down shift, and that's fine. Okay guys, so that's about it, and we can scale these volume to, in case if you want to don't see the end of it. And let's right click and join this area, and this is the final result. And now we are ready for a good render output, a single image render output. So we press shift A and the camera, control alt and 0. In this way you will lock the camera from this perspective. Control alt and 0. Now let's press N and we go to view and lock camera to view. So make sure to put your camera in a good angle, and
you can take help of your image reference that you had. Now let's select it and focus on it, and it will focus exactly the house in our camera angle. Which is good. And let's select the camera and go to the let's say lens, and we can use orthographic lens if we want. An orthographic lens, you know already how it sounds, so we can actually zoom it from here, but we can zoom from the slider. But I like to use a perspective. So let's select this area and make it in focus. And want to rotate it a little bit. Great. So guys, a very important message to you. I just lost my painted texture. So once you paint, make sure to click on these slots and save all the image texture. Otherwise you will lose whatever you have painted. Or you simply need to click on this image and save it. Okay, that's important. Now we have to save it. Let's save it in the mask collection, and we set it to PNG RGB and save as. Now we go to layout again and turn off whatever we have in the scene and turn on this cube. So of course we need to play around with the strength of it, and I like to use a very low strength to just see a subtle effect on our scene. Let's use 2 of that. Now it's a lot better to have it. And once everything is done, we just need to go to the render setting in the sampling. For the render, we want to use a 200 sample or a 300 sample. That's depend on your, of course, if you set the maximum samples to higher, then your time of the rendering process will be higher. And then let's go to the output and click on the format. In the format setting you can choose a higher resolution like 4K, but we will go with a square shape like this, and later I will expand it more. So now let's set the viewport to wireframe. Make sure to, when you are trying to take a render, make sure to set it to at least solid or wireframe, because it will take a little bit of your memory. Otherwise the Blender try to render out your viewport and at the same time render out the final scene. Then for the rendering, click on render and still image. But before, let's go to post processing. Oh, not this one. To the color management and set it to filmic and choose a medium high contrast, or choose a high contrast. That's depend on you. Okay, so I like to use a high contrast. I don't like to play around with these. Since if you want, you can change it in your actually the setting on your 2D software like Photoshop. So there is a quick fix that I want to apply. Is let's turn it off. Is this flag? So let's make it a little bit better. So we extrude it once, and Alt E face along normal. Let's give it some more
depthed it by just this simple actually editing. So let's turn it on. Everything is fine. Wireframe mode. Control S to save it and go to render image. And we will wait a few seconds. The remaining is about 1 minute. Once the render is finished, let's go to the compositing, and here you will see that I've added this glare effect. Let's click on this backdrop and we want to choose viewer and connect it to viewer, and now it allows you to see it in the background. Notice that by this glare we can make things even better. So let's delete it and we connect it and hold on shift and right click to add a point, and now everything is blurry, right? So we need to connect the image to it, and then let's type glare and connect it before these two. Set it to fog glow and just play around with this setting. You see that we have added this glow around our subject. Thank you for watching the tutorial. If you found that helpful, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content. If you want to learn even more, check out my paid courses. The link is in the description.